Hey everyone, welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture, and we are back in the saddle once again for another season. And before I introduce my guest, I do want to remind everybody that this episode is brought to you by my friend Preston Poulter's book, Palace of the Golden Princess, which offers a fun, sexy romp through a fantasy RPG setting run by women. Issue 3 launches soon on Kickstarter, and right now you can sign up for his email list at pocketjackcomics.com, where he will send you a free copy of issue 1 so you could try before you buy. As well as this episode is brought to you by another good friend of mine, JD Rosario, with Limbo. Check out Limbo. Open almost all of Eternity 1 and 2, where you will find demons, breasts, boobs, booze, hell, freezes over, and not safe for work covers. A comic book too naughty not to be nice. But enough about both of those projects, because I have with me comic creator and comic shop owner Kyle Willis. So welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
No, I am excited because obviously you touch upon a bunch of different areas. You've done a lot of stuff on Whatnot. You obviously have a comic shop down in Florida, as well as you are launching, and I'm going to say this and hopefully it won't be too offensive, your rookie book on Kickstarter, which is The Adventures of Wyatt and Pouches. So I'm very excited because there's a lot to talk about. So obviously, though, I think the best place to start is, what is The Adventures of Wyatt and Pouches? Because it is launching soon. I don't know if it's launching tomorrow or sometime this week.
It launches tomorrow at 6 p.m. So I built up writing the first issue of my book, which will ultimately be called On My Honor. I built it up to be such a big abstract idea in my own head that I intimidated myself out of getting to the work of writing it. So I finally made a deal with myself. I was like, why don't you just show them some of their adventures, and you don't have to talk about the origin to make that, because you want to make that perfect book, you know? And if you can't sit down and there's too much distraction, you just don't. And I was just refusing to give myself the time and the space and the quiet to write it. So I said, let's write a couple of their adventures. So there's actually 2 stories in the book, one written by me and one written by Stephen Rohlberg, a buddy of mine. And it's fun, and that's what comics are supposed to be, you know. And it was fun to write it. While I was writing the dialogue, I was smirking, you know, and I was like, shit, this is fun. This is what I was, you know, but I built it up into my head to be this gigantic thing that it really didn't need to be. And so I'm glad that I'm leading with this. So
yeah, let's actually talk about this, because this is one of my biggest problems in comics, is that life is hard, no matter which way you cut it. You know, whether you got a day job, whether you work for yourself, you know, people have issues in life. You know, life is full of hardships, overcoming challenges. And to me, comics have always been meant to be an escape, much like television. And I think this is one of the biggest problems I have in comics right now, is I don't want somebody to write the next great American novel. I want you to entertain me and take me out of my world. And I think when I back projects, and this is my issue with DC sometimes and Marvel, is that you're not taking me outside my world. You're bringing me into the world, which is already hard enough. And so what is that like, to say, hey, I want somebody to be entertained, and if I want to write a story that somebody gets a quick joke and they laugh for 30 seconds and their day is better. And even if it's only 30 seconds, you know, it makes a huge difference. I can't express that enough, because everybody has days where they need a 30-second good chuckle.
So yeah, I took the burden off of my shoulders to write the hyper visceral, perfect, you know, first book, and I just wrote something fun. I was like, let's give them their bread and circuses, you know, and that's exactly what this book is. It's, you know, 24 pages of bread and circuses, you know, tongue in cheek. It's fun. The artwork by C. Michael Lanning on the inside, the sequential artwork, came out fantastic, and it vibes perfectly with the story and the look. I couldn't be more happy. So I was there's a guy here in Florida that he used to run a show called the Comic Book Connection Show, and he would buy out the banquet hall of a Ramada, and he'd pull up in a tractor trailer and his employees, and it would be like a small con, but with one vendor that filled the entire room, right? And I went to one of his shows, and it was like $5 to get in, and you get 10 free 50-cent comics or whatever with your entry fee. So it's basically buy 10 50-cent comics and you get in free kind of deal, you know. And he would do giveaways over the course of the day. You could tell that the guy was like, he should have been a rock star. He shouldn't be selling comics. He should be on the road with the band, you know, the long flowing. That by the time I met him, his hair was white. But his name's Joe Peace. And I was like, you know what you need? You need an artist to set up and sell at your show. And he was like, you know any artists? And I was like, yeah. So I started setting up at his shows. And I would give him some prints, and every half an hour on the half hour, he would do giveaways, and he would give my prints away, and then people would come over to get it signed, and you know, it helped me get more business. And when I was on the on-ramp to starting to do Comic Cons and stuff, he was a great, you know, bridge that gap there. But while I was waiting for doors to open at one of those shows, I took a comic backboard and I just was doodling on it, you know, and I started chuckling to myself, thinking about how everybody in the 90s had this character with like a segmented metal arm or a cybernetic eye or a fucking earpiece for some reason. Like they're going to talk to home base. Like it was just all these tropes and these weird, but everybody had to have fucking pouches. You know, everybody had tactical pouches. Never once do you see what they reach in and pull out of them. The only person who you ever see them use their tactical pouches was Batman. But the 90s, I have shoulder pads and everything was just an excess of all this silliness. So I was like just doodling all these elements into a character with no feet, you know what I mean? Or tiny little feet, big gigantic guns for no reason, guns that were bigger than the character. And that's how I came up with the idea for pouches. And that was in like 2015. And ever since then, they rolled around in my head. And then 3 years later, because I posted it on Instagram when I drew it, you know, and oddly enough, Rob Liefeld commented on it. He just a little LOL, but it was funny that he was going through the hashtags or whatever and found my post and commented on it. And then 3 years later, people start sending me that knew that I created this character, and it had evolved over the 3 years since I made that first sketch. But they start sending me pictures that Rob Liefeld's doing sketches on his Instagram, got this character called The Pouch, which is basically was the same thing. You know, there was no metal arm or cybernetic eye, but it was a character made out of tactical pouches. And I was like, oh, that's cute. He was inspired by my poke at him in the 90s era of comics, you know. And then he released Bloodstrike Brutalists number 23, and it had The Pouch on the cover. And I was like, come on, bro. So I reached out to Rich Johnston over at Bleeding Cool, and I was like, this cracker stole my character, man. And he's like, show me what you got. So I showed him the Instagram post from 3 years prior with Rob's comment on it. And he's like, I'll talk to Rob. And he reaches out for comment and, you know, it's like, hey, this guy created this character or whatever. It feels like you stole his character. He's like, I never heard of Kyle Willis. And he's like, well, what about this comment where you laughed at it, you know, 3 years ago? And he's like, threw his hands up. He can do whatever he wants. So he never put that character in print ever again after that. That was
what is that like? Because this is really interesting. Is that obviously I was just watching a documentary on Dane Cook stealing jokes, and Louis C.K. said, I forgot the term, but you watch him and then you think it's like amnesia. It's like awake amnesia.
It's so weird. I just saw it yesterday. The word you're talking about, it's called like. It's like OBS, obsequentia, or some weird word like that.
Yeah.
Like something comes inside of you, and then time goes by, and it rolls around in your head with whatever other ideas, and then you think that you came up with that idea independently, and turns out you were actually influenced by this thing that you saw that you forgot that you had seen.
So, but what is that like? Because this whole thing is that it must mean that you're onto something, and so what is that like when you strike gold? Where obviously,
well, all my friends wanted to be indignant on my behalf, and I was like, no. Like, this is making it a greater origin story for the character, because the character in my book is the figment of my main character Wyatt's imagination, kind of like a Calvin and Hobbes type of scenario. You know what I mean? So this whole real life drama or whatever, if you will, it only makes it better. And when people come by my booth and they see the artwork of Pouches and they're like, "Oh, is that Rob Liefeld character?" And I'm like, "Actually," and then I launch into the tale, and they're like, "No fucking way!" And I'm like, "Bring up the Bleeding Cool article. It's called "Separated at Birth: Pouches versus the Pouch," and they're like, "No!" Oh! So yeah, it's pretty wild. You know what I mean? So shout out to the bad boy of comics, for taking that idea and running with it for a little while, because all he did is made me feel like, you know what, I had something here with this concept. And if he thought it, he thought it was cool enough to take and run with it for a little while. Obviously, he wanted to play with my toy. It must be a cool toy, right? So.
No, see, this is so interesting. And this is what I think is fascinating. I think what's fascinating is that this is a happy ending in a lot of ways versus a negative.
It's free promotion. Anytime somebody sees this character and they associate it with Rob, that's an opening. That's a conversation starter. That I don't need an icebreaker anymore, because that was it. Them making that connection. So he basically marketed this character for me before the book ever dropped.
That's amazing. That's just I love it, because I also love the fact that, and I'm going to say something controversial, but a lot of artists and a lot of creators have been screwed out of their characters. A lot, and not even in comics. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. We have the writer's strike going on right now, and this is one of the big issues. And I might be entering dangerous territory here, but I don't think I'm saying anything that isn't known already. That this is one of the big issues right now that's going on, I think, with creation. And it's nice to see that, somebody took your toy and took your character, but then they backed down and you still have it, and that it made it better, because that doesn't
absolutely.
And I think it's very important to acknowledge it. And I think to some degree, it's also important to give credit to Rob Liefeld, saying, well, maybe I did, not borrowed it. We'll use the word borrow.
Sure.
I would prefer to use a very generous term, but we're going to use the word borrow. But I think it's really important, and it's super interesting. And then obviously, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on with this book, and obviously it's a fun book, and it's dropping tomorrow on Kickstarter.
Correct. 6 p.m. Eastern.
And so even to go further, though, because what I like about your page is that it is explicitly clear what this story is about on your Kickstarter, which I like on the following page, or on the follow page, I guess the pre-launch page it might be called. And, basically there's going to be a conflict of darkness coming from the nether realm, and that Wyatt and Pouches are going to be dealing with this.
Yes.
And I like that, because when I look at this book, I know what to expect. And I think it's actually very important right now, because, I mean, you back plenty of Kickstarters. I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, at any point.
Over 150.
And I'm sure, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that you've backed something and it looked like it was going to be A and it really was B. And you're like, wasn't expecting it to be B, where it was.
If I could interrupt you, I had a live stream on Whatnot this afternoon, and on that stream, I unboxed a Kickstarter box that came like a month ago that I had yet to open, and I knew that I bought Metal Comics from this creator who I had backed several times. When I opened the box, I was showing them one by one to the screen, and I'm like, oh, it's another foil, no metals yet, and there were no metals. He didn't know Metal Comics were a thing. And I actually called him 20 minutes before we went live. And I was like, do I got the wrong box here or whatever? And he didn't know Metal Comics were a thing. He was calling the kind of foil, he was calling it a metal. So I was like, he's like, oh my God, I'm mortified right now. I'll refund you. And I'm like, no. This is all love, bro. It's all good. But don't say metal moving forward, because people are going to expect to get metals. And he's never seen a metal cover, comic book before. And it's a ubiquitous thing now that's growing, in the industry. So not only have I experienced thinking I'm getting A and then I'm ending up with B, I had it happen to me on a live stream today.
There's a reason why I don't do live unboxings. There's several reasons why. That's one good reason. And then if it's damaged, I don't want to embarrass somebody for something.
Sure.
I would prefer to keep it private, and then I'll put it up on Instagram, or
If
I'll
I
throw
was a
it.
professional, I would have opened it first and then staged it to look like it was sealed still, and then unboxed it, knowing what was inside waiting for me. But I just, did it off the cuff. I was doing a couple of giveaways, telling everybody go bookmark the Kickstarter, and I was like, oh, I got this box of comics I haven't opened yet. It was just kind of came to me while I was live, and I was just like, oh, go. I've definitely thought I was getting one thing and ended up getting another.
I've done that on pledges, but what would that could happen? But I'm even just thinking of the idea that I backed a book that I thought was going to be a magical fantasy, and it really wasn't a magical fantasy. And that's one of the things that is a big pet peeve for me, is when people don't honestly present their Kickstarter project to me, because I like certain things. I'm a big mecha fan. I'm a big war comic reader type of guy where I love military stuff. And if you say, hey, my book is a military oriented book, and then it's mages battling, well, that's not military. And then I've gotten books like that, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves. And this is one of the things that I like about your book in particular. And just from the sign up page, I have an idea of what to expect.
Yes.
And I think it's a real problem in comics, because this doesn't just happen. I think I've backed maybe 70 projects, and I would say 10 out of the 70, I've had problems like this. And maybe I misread a few of them, but I don't think I misread the 10 that I had an issue with, all of them. And I don't think I'm alone in that. Maybe I am, I don't know. But I think it's a real issue. And I think creators are terrified, saying, if I don't present this as A, B, or C, I'm not going to get funded. And I think they're trying to get funding, but then they're not realizing that you got to represent it correctly. Like,
yeah, it's almost like they're asking ChatGPT to write the description for them, and ChatGPT didn't read the book. You know what I mean? So how is it going to write your elevator pitch for you? So.
And so, I mean, I'm just curious how you feel about all that, because obviously you have a different perspective than other people, because you're in the business way more than I'm in the business. You have a retail comic shop, and obviously you are presenting and you're doing your first book, but you've been around people who have done Kickstarters like travel.
I'm very lucky that I backed enough. I've worked Artist Alley at shows enough that I've seen people doing things that I would never want to do. And that has helped me form how I do business, because I've seen so many people doing things that were a turnoff to me. I make sure not to do those things, because I don't want to ever make anybody feel the way that creator made me feel in that moment. Anybody that knows me knows that I got my shtick is I will never charge for my signature. I will always sign for free, because I hate paying for signatures. Now, that's not to say that you can't get like you want it to look like it's made out of gold. Yeah, you'll pay extra for like a remark sig, but I'll always sign my books for free. I will never charge for my signature. I had a CGC signing event fall through because I didn't want to charge for the signatures. I was like, I'll charge for the remarks, but I'm not going to charge for the signatures. And they dropped it. It was dead in the water. So I'm setting up CGC signings at HQ for other artists who charge for their sig. But I told people I'll never charge for my sig ever.
This is interesting. So I don't have a problem paying for a signature personally, because I understand that sometimes artists get screwed. I understand that there's also people who buy and get it signed and they put it up on eBay, and that the artist feels or the writer feels that they're being, screwed out of money, or that they should get a piece of it. But I also get to the point saying, if you're going to charge me $300 for a signature, there gets a point where we have now exceeded a limit. And so somebody's charging $15. So I'll use a name. I don't think he's going to mind. Scott Snyder charges, I think, $15 if it's getting CGC'd. You know what it is? It's not terrible. It's understandable. But if he was charging $100, I think, there's a limit. And I mean, look, I'm a free market capitalist, but if people are paying it, I'm not going to object, but I won't pay $100. What I was saying, in case anybody misses that, I won't pay $100 for it. And I think that's where it gets tricky for me, because I understand that there is.
It's a weird thing to me to someone tell me, how much is your signature? It's this much money. But if you're getting it graded, it's that much money. Like, it's none of your business if I'm getting it graded. It's my property, you know.
I
So
mean,
that bothers me when they
I
have a different
also
price for if
also
it's getting
come.
graded.
I, yeah, I also come from a different world where I come from a sports memorabilia world. So if I get a Pete Alonso baseball PSA DNA, I mean, I understand that that's the world I come from. So I have a very different view than other people. But
I
I,
mean, I have no problem with, there's other ways to make your money. You know what I mean? You want to charge $5 for your signature? Travel isn't free. You got to pay to be there. So don't show up and just give a little, But what's wrong with having like a $10 foil print or a $20 foil print and saying, I'll sign everything for free as long as you buy something off the booth. That way, every single person come into the booth, you got a $20, $10, or $20 sale. You know what I mean? And if you're worried about what somebody's going to do with your item in the secondary market, then that means you're looking at it wrong. Because a lot of people buy my stuff. Go to eBay and type Kyle Willis and look at sold listings. You can do it right now. It'd blow your mind what people get from my stuff in the secondary market. And you know what those flippers are to me? My marketing staff, my unpaid marketing interns, because the people will buy it because they're like, oh, that's fire. I got to have that. And then when they find me and they see how much cheaper they can get it from me, that person that converted that buyer into a fan collector.
or even to go even further, let's say that it was a limited 50 print, right? And all of them are sold out. What happens when you drop another print? So I got to get that thing quick. I can't pretend. I can't fuck around here. I got to get that thing quick. And I'm not interested in paying $100 for that thing. If he's selling it for $20, when that thing comes out, I'm there. I'm there, and that's where I'm at. Because that's what happened.
That's part of the reason my followers have grown, because people want to get it from the source. So I love the secondary market, and I always find a way to leave meat on the bone when I deal with dealers.
I mean, it's a big debate between all of this, and it's very complicated. And look, I make good money on the secondary market. I buy and flip books, and I invest in books, and I put real money into it. And as I have clients who return to me because the book sells out, and they want a way how to get the book, and they're looking for certain things, and everybody's happy. And I'm a reasonable person where if I'm making $15 on the deal, they're getting their book, they're getting a low number of the book. Everybody's happy, and there you go. And let's say that, they don't want something, there you go. That's great too. And they know the book's going to arrive perfectly from me. And so
all I hear is people complaining, oh, the flippers, da, 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 da. But like, how many people do they save a flight, hotel stay accommodations? They save them having to buy a ticket to go to the show, standing in the line. They're performing a service for the community at large, and ultimately it ends up in a PC somewhere, never to surface again for sale. I think that flippers are a natural part of the market, just like sucker fish that hang on sharks. You know what I mean?
Do you feel, because I was speaking to somebody, and you might know who I was speaking to about this. You know Dustin Burnell, right?
I do.
And so me and him were talking about this, and he says, I love flippers because they help to determine value of what a book really is. And in a lot of ways, once a book, so if you sell me a book for $20, but then in the secondary market, it's worth 60, and then it's maintaining at 60 or even more in the secondary market, the real value of that book is not $20. The real value of that book is somewhere between 20 and 60. And that's good for you because, well, you may not see that $60 yourself. That creates value in what you're doing. And Correct. It adds an element to it. And if you just released your first book, for instance, and all of a sudden you had a low print run and that thing's trading way higher, isn't that a good thing? Because doesn't that increase your worth?
It's crafting your legacy for your body of work. Absolutely. One of my first covers that I ever painted was for Dustin Burnell for his first book. I did the hand painted cover for his first issue, first book he ever dropped.
So I mean, look, I get why people are upset about it, but at the same time, I just think that they're upset because they're not seeing the money. I don't think they have a problem with the value it creates, but it's just fascinating for me. And obviously, I love it, and I think it's so interesting. I think this signature stuff is so interesting too. And I've heard both sides of the argument. I've also heard people say, "Look, I have nothing else. I only have a first issue and a poster." and I need to figure out a way how to make money, and so I'm charging $5 for a signature. And again, I'm not in that side of the business, so for me, I understand it, but I don't know if I have a dog in the fight on that side, and I don't think I really can comment. I can only say what I would do.
Sure.
Hopefully we're not getting too controversial.
Matter of fact, let me see. I might even have a copy of that book I was talking about.
I think it's just very interesting, and I think that this is just a fascinating area because obviously it's so tricky, and I feel like nobody wants to talk about it. That's how I feel.
Can you see that?
Oh, that's cool.
So this is for the cover that I painted for Dustin's book, The Listener. So I went on eBay and I bought a newspaper from the day after Pearl Harbor got bombed, December, 8th, 1941. And I put those pages down onto my canvas so that you could see through the paint the newspaper. You see where you can see the article right through the paint. And I painted his character and a Wolverine #1 homage.
That's pretty cool.
It was neat. The original art got bought by, who Javon Jordan is?
Yeah. He does.
So, Hail Crow, and he's got a bunch of stuff.
He did like the Crown Jewel variants, right? Or the shoot.
Run the Jewels.
What are
Run
they?
the Jewels.
Yeah, it's like
the band Run the Jewels. Yeah. So he bought the original artwork when I painted it. He saw it. He hit me up on Instagram. He's like, "Yo, I gotta have that, homie. How much is it?" So that was fun. I've since come to know him as a colleague, and a friend. I didn't know him at the time. He wasn't even on my radar yet. And now, when I worked San Diego, we shared a hotel room, so it's funny how your trajectory changes everything. You know what I mean? So fast when you start to get a little traction in the industry and you start to brush elbows with the right people and you work with the right people. It's peculiar how much things can change, and how fast.
No. It's interesting who how you get to places and what and then also it's who and then it's actually rising to the level of it.
Yeah.
And it's grinding it out too in a lot of ways.
I remember like 3 years ago when I first heard of Comic Tom, when he first got on my radar, and I was like, oh, this guy is clearly adapted to technology and YouTube and all this stuff, and now I'm on a first name basis with him. I just did a cover for his forthcoming book for his dad. His dad hired me to do a variant cover for his book. So it's nuts. So
that's kind of crazy. It's wild. And then even to swing back, you've done a lot of stuff. And then you're now coming into Kickstarter. And that's what's crazy about your whole trajectory is that you haven't been in Kickstarter at all. And this is your rookie book. And so what is that like? Because you're not coming in. I'll use an analogy. I'm a big baseball fan. So I'm a big New York Mets fan, and I love Senga. But Senga is not a rookie, but he's in his rookie year. But he's like a 29, 30-year-old pitcher because he pitched like 7 years or 8 years in Japan. And so you're kind of in your rookie book, but you're not a rookie. So what is that like? Because I don't know how to explain that any other way.
Well, it's I don't have a fear of being all dressed up for the party and nobody comes over and drinks my punch. I don't have a fear that I'm going to fall short. You know what I mean? I feel very confident that the book will fund. I only asked for $500 in funding. It feels good. You know, a lot of people probably put these things together and they're worried the whole time. They're worried about every little detail being perfect so that they, squeeze as much information in there as they can. I see some people, I've scrolled through some of these listings, these campaigns, where they like put every fucking page of the book in the body of when you're giving away the whole farm here. What are you doing? So I think it's allowed me to be free of that worry. I can pay for this book and just take it to shows and sell it at shows. So I don't need Kickstarter. You know what I'm saying? So the relationship is going with Kickstarter is so much healthier because I'm not like, oh my God, if this doesn't fund, I'm not going to be on the edge of my seat. I do not have the fear that it won't fund. And I feel very lucky to feel that way.
Let's actually talk about that, because this is something that's fascinating, the relationship between creating something on Kickstarter and the creator and even the backer. Because I feel, and maybe again I'm the odd man out in this whole thing, while I did run a Kickstarter, it really wasn't well done what I did, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was thrown to the wind, and God bless me, I made it across the finish line, but a million things I would do differently. But I think it's interesting where I feel a lot of creators view Kickstarter as the be all end all, where if they don't make it on Kickstarter, they can't realize their comic into production or put into production, and then they throw everything at it. And I don't know if that's healthy. I don't know if that's a good thing. And I think that it should be considered to be a stop on the road to your book. I don't think it should be the stop.
Yeah,
And
for a lot of people, the anxiety of crossing the finish line takes up too much of their bandwidth. They could be better served putting the finishing touches on the IP networking, but they're too busy bogged down with the stress of, am I going to fund? They're refreshing the page. They're bean counting. They're, oh my God, I had a backer drop off. I don't care about any of that. Travis is, Travis Gibb. I think I met you through him.
There's no S. There's no S at the end of his name.
No, there's absolutely not. But I asked him, I was like, you think I should bother with a Kickstarter? Or should I just pull up to New York Comic Con with this thing and blam, drop it on the desk like pulling out my meat and throwing it down? He was like, dude, you're going to have eyes on your book that you wouldn't have through your own social media if you put it on Kickstarter. It can only help you. And I was like, well, shit. Why, how could I not now? So yes, the people that would always normally support me are going to come out, but when they back the campaign, they're going to tickle the algorithms for me, and they're going to help me get it, into the eyes of the new people that are going to come. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm showing up.
Did you also feel, though, that you can drop it on your table after the Kickstarter and you can still get that market even with people who don't touch it?
Yeah, I'm actually going to allow retailers. I opened up 5 spots. I'm having a big event this coming weekend at my shop, a Whatnot only streamer event where we're going to take over Whatnot for the weekend. And I'm opening up 5 spots, and I'm going to let 5 of them put out their own exclusive of my book, their cover. One of them has already been claimed by Trolls Comics, but that's definitely gonna help spread the awareness of the IP. And anybody that's a completist that gets their cover, they'll come to me trying to get my cover. And the cool thing is, I'm not gonna charge them. They're not gonna pay me a single dime. They're gonna give me a small percentage of their print run so that I can hold on to them and have them at shows and stuff. But I'm gonna let them print the books at cost. They're not gonna pay me. They're gonna pay the printer. And I don't think anybody's ever done that, ever.
That's interesting. And I actually like that. And I think it's smart. And I think more people should do it. Obviously, I know certain people have taken pieces of people's print runs, or they've, printed at a reduced rate. I think Preston's done that with some people in their books, where he said somebody was going to be printing 1,200 books. He said, hey, look, let me take 150 of your books out of that print run to help you and with my own variant. So it wasn't, I don't think, at pure cost, but it was at a reduced cost. But I think it's actually really smart. And I was speaking to somebody about that for a project in February that they're going to launch where they would get maybe 15 sets of a book I would want to do on their campaign. And instead of basically that would be the license. So they would get 15 or 10 books that would cover their license for me to having a variant. And then I'd have the other 40, but I would still pay the printing. Because it's just another way how to do business. And I think it's actually really, really smart. I think it's.
I see a lot of people, quote unquote, playing the variant game that they're getting strangled out. They're being met with minimum order quantities that are too high for a smaller online only retailer, right? So they're buying more copies than they would ever be able to sell. You know, you can't, if you want to do a scout book, you have to buy 250 copies.
I can't
run. If you want to do a virgin on top of that, you have to do 100 of them. You can't do 50. And it's like, you know, you get priced out, you know.
I could tell you, so one of my biggest problems with retail is right now my business. So there's two problems I have. 50 books is at the high end that my business can handle. Because the last thing I want to do is stress out my business. I could handle 50 if it's the right book, but that's where I cap out. So Scout, nothing against Scout, I can't handle their volume, and it's not a problem with them. It's just that I do not have the bandwidth, and it's just what it is. But then if a company like Banner Bards gives me 50, I could handle 50 if I really wanted to do it, but it would still be stressful. So when I'm actually looking at retail packages, and me and Dustin Bernal, I don't think he's going to mind me saying it, you know, I said to him, I can't do 50 of your books on your Kickstarter, but I could do 15. Because I can move 15 books without risking the business. And I think this is one of the things that I think a lot of people in Kickstarter don't understand. When you're dealing with retailers, sometimes, and obviously I wasn't doing 15 of a custom, I was doing 15 of just a bunch of his different covers, but you know, that he has on the campaign. I don't know if that makes any sense. But so like cover A, C, and D, for instance. But I think that sometimes a lot of people don't understand is that if you have a shop that is medium size, they might not be able to move 50 books, or they might only want 20 because they don't know.
Correct.
They don't know. And so I think when I see these people doing, you need to order 50 books, I'm like, you're missing it. Like if somebody wants 10 of your books in a retail package, you should build something custom for them. I'm not saying they have to go and hire and build a whole new cover artist, but if they want covers A and B, you should do 5 of each.
So I did put an LCS tier in my campaign where they can buy 10 copies of the A cover at 50% off. Must be a verified shop, you know, but 10 copies of the fledgling book, I'm not trying to make you buy 50, you know, 10 copies I think is perfect. You want 20 copies, buy 2 of them. You know what I mean? Add another one on, you know, in the add-ons and check out.
And I mean, I think it's actually a really big problem because I think a lot of people do not understand retail, and obviously you run a shop. And so I think naturally you understand retail. You understand that a shop needs to make money. You need to make money, and that there's a way how to do it so that there's at least a little bit of meat on the bone.
This is another thing. It's part of my empirical data that went into the way I do business because I don't want to do, you know, I don't want to make a potential backer feel the way I was made to feel when I backed this other thing that I had to buy too many copies and, you know, bite off more than I was particularly able to, you know, personally able to chew. So that's why I made my campaign the way that I made it.
I think it's so smart. I think it's just a massive problem. And I think that a lot of it goes down to just people not speaking to retail. I think it goes down to what people can actually print as well. If you're printing 500 copies of a book, it's easier to do a retail package sometimes than if you're only printing 100, because costs come down at 500. They don't come down at 100 the same way.
Correct.
And again, I've never printed a book, so if I'm completely wrong, feel free to correct me.
Well, you know, you get price breaks and you know, page count is a thing. I'm working with a printer out in Arizona who I've printed with everyone. If you name a company that prints books, have I ordered for? Yes, I've ordered from them. Direct
I feel
impression,
the
comic
company.
impression, yes. Comics Wellspring, yes. I've done them all. Geico, yes.
Is it Ready Comics in Arizona?
Huh. No, but I've used them.
Because I like them a lot. But that's the only Arizona company I know.
Yeah, no, there are a lot of them are out there. Artist Express is out there, who I've used. If you ever heard of the comic book The Changeling, the artist and creator of The Changeling is one of the owners of Artist Express, and that's how I found that printing company, was through him. And I was like, bro, who does all this printing? This is awesome. These are crazy. He's like, oh, I do. And I was like, what? And I started using him.
You're bringing up a really good point about using the correct printer. I mean, a lot of people use Comics Wellspring. A lot of people use Ready Comics. I know a bunch of people do it. And then obviously Kablam down in Florida is another one that I know a bunch of people use. And so what is that like, figuring out? Mixum used to be a sponsor for this show, and
for me, it's a matter of the ease of use. If I have to spend an hour setting up, the files because your interface sucks or is archaic, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, so the ease of use for me is a big factor. Ready Comics, I would use them in a heartbeat if their website didn't suck. Their website, garbage. Like, their website makes me want to punch somebody in the face. It's that bad, bro. And they acknowledge that it's that bad and keep telling me, oh, we're fixing it, They occasionally reach out to me and solicit me, and I'm just like, can't do it, bro. And their turnaround time, I can't deal with the turnaround time on metal covers at Ready Comics. But when I do buy from Ready Comics, the quality, chef's kiss, bro. It's so good quality.
Oh, I mean,
the website sucks, and the turnaround time it doesn't work for me.
I'm a huge Mount Olympus fan. I really like what they do. I like selling their books, but their turnaround time is a disaster. And I don't think it's Mount Olympus's fault. I think it's Ready Comics. It's that the quality on those books that they print are fantastic. I agree completely. It takes forever. And
so this September marks a year that I've been working with this printer, and I don't want to flex, but I've spent a lot of money with this guy. You know what I mean? And his ease of use and his fast turnaround time have added to the amount of success that I'm enjoying right now. So I'm going to be hyper brand loyal to him as long as he's as good to me as he has been. So, and I send him business all the time. Lot of business. I started a folder for all the 9.9s that people send me a picture of on Instagram when I send their book to be graded for them, and they get it back and it's a 9.9. He started printing on faux leather for books, for covers, a couple months ago. And I did a book for Jimmy Noble, totally rad. For Evil Rad, he wanted me to do a Necronomicon, and they printed it on this faux leather. And it looked so good, bro. It looked so good. The first 3 copies that got graded came back at 10. 10. And one of them, all 3 were signed, but one of them had a remark painted onto it, and it got a 10.
That's something. That's something. I can tell you that.
Over 30, almost 40 9.9s in the last year of working with him. And that's just the ones where they send me a picture of it and I have proof. You know what I mean? If I were to go to every book that I've put out and look at the CGC census, I'm sure I'd probably find 4 times as many 9.9s and 10s.
So how important is that? Because that's also brand, right? If I say, cool, I know that you use a good company, that your books come back prestigious, 9.8s or higher, right? Because I want to get it graded, and I'm being generous. There's a reason why I'm using 9.8 versus 9.9. Is because I view 9.8 as the top echelon of what a book should. You should be guaranteed a 9.8.
If it's a brand new book that hasn't been read, there's no reason it shouldn't be a 9.8.
I purposely pick a lower standard versus the higher standard, but then when it comes back as a 9.9 or even a 10, I mean that also
keeps people coming back. It keeps them coming back, bro.
Because all of a sudden it creates value, it creates exclusivity, it creates a certain standard. And I think it's really important. No one say, hey, look, if I know that this thing's going to come back and I'm going to get good quality, it's the same thing why people buy from me on eBay with Mount Olympus. I get low Mount Olympus books. So when you get a 1 out of 65 or a 2 out of 65, my customers know that there's going to be low numbers in that. So they know that they're going to get a 2 out of 65 or a 3 out of 65. They say, if he's charging me $55 for this versus 50, chances are he has a 2 or a 3 of that book versus number 64. And so it's very helpful to me where it allows me to make a little bit more money and also keep a customer happy. And I think that's what this does when it comes back as a 9.9.
I have collectors that buy 2 of everything that I do. One for them to keep and one for them to flip later when the value goes up to pay for their, their habit, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very important part, and I thank him often. I tell him it's not lost on me that the quality of your product and your turnaround time is a bullet point in the success that I'm currently enjoying, and I want you to know that I appreciate you, and I make sure that I pay his invoices on time. You know what I mean? Bro, just paying people in general seems to be a fucking problem for some people. When I pay my artists the second that they're like, this is the finished cover, and they give me the link to the Dropbox for the file, and I within 2 minutes send them a screenshot where I've paid them, they're just like, nobody pays this fast. Why? You're doing a service for me. Why is an artist always the last person to get paid? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Again, not to get too controversial, but I know plenty of people in comics who haven't paid their artists. I know plenty of people who left projects haven't been paid. I know plenty of people who have had issues, and I know plenty of people who I'm still waiting for their books to be delivered. And I don't really get it. How complicated is this? When I buy something on eBay, I'm a big baseball card collector. I buy a baseball, I win it within a minute. I pay for my item. Like, I don't understand how complicated it is to pay for services.
If I had $1 for every time somebody won an auction and they were like, oh, I'm fishing, I'll pay when I get back in the office. You can pay with your phone, bro. What are you talking about? Why, but there's always ultimately that percentage of people that are like, oh, I'm away right now. I'll pay when I get back on Monday because it ended on a Friday night. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you taking me around for? You can pay with your phone. You don't have to be in front of the computer. What are you doing?
I mean, it's rare that I'll pay on a Saturday morning. So I've won auctions and I put my money in. It was ending at 3 a.m. and I was asleep. And I'm like, hey man, I'm sorry, I was sleeping. It's 8 a.m. Here you go. That happens. But like, I don't get it. And
making somebody wait 3 or 4 days for payment when you want to, come on, man. What are we doing?
But I still don't get why people don't pay their artists. And I've heard this story so many times. And when I do a book, I'm going to be paying my artists on time. And I'm going to be paying them installments for pages because that's what I feel comfortable with. But if they do 3 pages, they get the 3 pages done, they should be paid.
Exactly. The moment that they turn those pages in, the moment you see them, you should pay them. But I won't pay an artist up front in full ever again. I've had way too many, like even big name artists, to take my money and just after a while stop responding to my texts. Like, what? Like, so I'll pay a 50% deposit. I will not pay anybody in full up front for commission work ever again.
Yeah, no, it's interesting in which that I paid at a con for a commission up front and I felt comfortable doing it because it was a well-known artist and he wasn't going to screw me. It was Elias Chazudis. I don't think Elias was going to screw me out of $275 for a commission on a book. I think it would be really bad. I think it would get around pretty quickly. Did a fantastic job, but that's a little bit different than if I was hiring a cover or I was doing a 24-page book. Like, I think 3 pages at a time makes sense because I know plenty of people who say that my artist ran away with the money. And as a backer, that's the last thing I want to hear ever.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never hear from anybody that I do work with. I tell you that. So, but the cool thing is that since apparently I'm some kind of golden eagle, a rare bird that pays when I need them, they always bump me to the front of the line, and I'm not doing anything, in my personal opinion, that everybody shouldn't be already doing. So if that gives me some kind of preferential treatment, I'll take it.
It's interesting because you're not doing what everybody does, though.
I'm doing what everybody should do.
That's the key. Is that's what makes this interesting. Is that, and I mean, I have a thought on why this is. I think a lot of people in comics struggle with funds. I think a lot of people are really bad with money, in managing money and deployment of money. And I think what happens is that all of a sudden someone's like, oh man, I had the $500 for these 5 pages or these 10 pages, and then my car broke down. And they don't have that money, and then they want to pay their artist, but they are struggling to manage the whole money system versus having the money up front, and then shit happens and you have an emergency, and this would be the perfect opportunity for Dave Ramsey to sponsor my show. Ramsey Solution, guys. No, they're not a sponsor yet. But I think that's what happens. That's what I think happens, is that shit happens, or your kid gets sick, or something happens where you thought you had $1,200 and you really only had $800, and you're like, what do I do? And then that's why you get paid 2 weeks later. Somebody.
The possibility of using social media as an arena or a marketplace to sell books has made everybody that ever had a comic book feel like they could be a seller. And not everybody should be a seller. Not everybody should be a dealer. Not everybody should be a shop owner. Some people should just be a fan. You don't need to be selling books. You don't need to be trying to, especially if you're struggling with your day to day. If you're putting $5 in gas in your car at a time, you shouldn't be putting together a book. You should be finding a way for someone to sponsor you. If you feel like you got a book that you need to put out, get somebody that believes in you. Let them be your money guy, But too many people think that they're a shop, and they're not. They don't have the etiquette for it. They don't have the business savvy. They don't know how to handle their funds.
It took me 10 years to get to where I'm at right now, and I feel like I'm just starting to get good. It took me 10 years, everybody. That should get, and I think I'm just starting to get good at selling comics. So I'm not saying everybody should do it faster than I should do it by definition, but it took me 10 years. That doesn't mean I was bad along the way, and there was a lot of failures. But again, I also didn't start out playing around with 50 grand. I started out with $100. So the most amount of money I was going to lose buying and flipping books was $100. It took me 10 years to grow it to where it is right now in my business. And that's the thing, too, is that I think sometimes people want that instant gratification.
And they're not willing to work with what they got. And they take these Hail Mary shots, and then they end up owing people money, and then nobody wins in a scenario like that. It took me, I quit my job waiting tables at Outback Steakhouse in August of 2011. And I've only in the last year started to really find my footing in this arena. So I've been doing my thing. I haven't been behind the scenes. I haven't been hiding from the world. It took that long to get traction. I'm not doing anything now that I wasn't doing 10 years ago. I just worked with enough people and satisfied enough collectors and earned and maintained the trust with my buyership for this long that I'm enjoying my moment in the sun right now. It doesn't happen overnight. So and you
I agree.
Don't overextend yourself.
And I also think that, some people need to learn to enjoy the journey as well, because I could tell you that it has been I'm sure I think you've enjoyed the journey, right?
Absolutely. Well, the journey is the destination, right? So, I really like the traveling now. I didn't like flying because I never did it because I didn't like it. I maybe flown 3 times in my life. And then June of last year, I got flown to Brooklyn Comic Con. They brought me out as a guest. And it just kind of, I've probably flown 40 different places now. It's been a crazy year.
I'm the opposite. I don't want to leave my house. I like interviewing, where I used to do a lot of cons, and I really like being in this space, and I like being able to sit in my house and interview people from all over the world. And as a result, I interview people from Australia, New Zealand, New England, France, Germany, Japan, and my world expanded because of the internet. And I'm like, I don't have to go to a con to interview some of the most interesting people in the world.
Well,
And
hopefully one day you'll embrace it because people would like to see you out on the street pounding the pavement like a correspondent, bringing it to them live from the actual con or a hotel room or a hotel bar, sitting
well,
there with with Steranko or somebody. So sometimes your comfort zone will kill you, bro. Okay, so. So stay there until you're comfortable, but poke your head out.
I'm not anti poking my head out. It's really going to be probably 2024. I'm
Sure.
taking the rest of the year off. I'm in year one of my job also, so I don't have much vacation time left.
Well, come. Where are you at?
I'm in Connecticut, so
Come to New Hampshire with me in March or April, and me and you and Steranko will sit down and we'll have a little interview.
Maybe I will take a trip up to New Hampshire in March.
So yeah, they're flying me out to the Little Giants Old School Comic Show in Concord in April. So Steranko is going to be the guest of honor, and everybody else is going to be there. You got Al Milgram will be there, Mike Royer. So you want to get some of those 1970s beasts? Let's go.
I go old school. One of my favorite interviews of all time. There's two. Denny O'Neil, I did,
Okay.
and Paul Levitz, who is a professor of mine.
Okay.
So I go old school, definitely old school. And then there's others that are just great. Chuck Dixon is great. Love Chuck Dixon. And then just there's been some amazing people, and I'm fearless. All I do is I ask. That's all I do. I ask and I hope for the best.
That's why I got to work with Sienkiewicz because I messaged him on Facebook and then I commented on a post and he replied to my comment. He said, "Message me." I said, "I did, but you didn't respond." And then he went and found the message and he was like, "Here, this is my assistant's contact information. Message her and we'll get it squared away." I did a cover with him. So I put out a Ruth Bader Ginsburg book like a year and a half ago, and I got him to do a cover. So
I don't know. Did you might know this more than I would? Did Scalia pass away before she did, or did she pass away after Scalia?
I think Scalia passed away first.
So because I was in D.C. and I got to see the Supreme Court, and Scalia was on the court, and which means that she was on the court as well, and fascinating. And I actually got to meet Scalia afterwards, and super fascinating discussion.
What's his first name? Antonin?
I think it's Anthony Scalia or Antonio Scalia. I'm not exactly sure. It's one or the other.
It was like a weird Antonin or a weird.
He has one of the most liberal decisions of all time. Oddly enough, it was the video game case in California.
Antonin Scalia.
Super fascinating guy, very, very interesting man. But the two of them are so close. They were so close. So basically, during DC, they would go to the opera together, despite being on the opposite political sides. So there's hope that we could all get along.
Well, I put out a very controversial book, and there's a lot of people that take shots at it because they don't know what it is, But it's brought so many people from both sides of the aisle together that I'm grateful that I had the balls to release it. And it's had over 11 variant covers, and every single one of them sold out.
Let's actually talk about that because I like controversy, right? Eric Bischoff. I love Eric Bischoff. I'm a huge wrestling fan. And Eric Bischoff has a book called Controversy Creates Cash. Eric Bischoff was really good for WWE from 2002 to 2004. He created a lot of controversy for wrestling. He made wrestling really enjoyable. And while some of that stuff might not stand today, it was important to get WWE established where it is right now.
Sure.
And Eric Bischoff, 100% right. So what is that like to have a controversial book that gets attention, gets people talking, and whether you're right, left, center, independent, libertarian, progressive, so
it's surreal seeing the way different people respond to the exact same thing. You know how memory can be weird? Like 3 people can experience a scenario and they all have a different take on it. Well, to see that with
Absolutely.
a piece of IP that I created is it's surreal. It's the only word that makes any sense. It's nuts. But the fact that I've had people from both sides of the aisle buy this book, like they're ravenous for it, and I've painted remarks on it that were both left and right leaning. It's tremendous, man. It's tremendous, and to have that many people that I would never agree with politically collect and buy my art, and drive from other states to meet me in person to get me to paint on the copy that they bought from somebody else, and it's crazy, bro. It's absolutely batshit crazy.
But
So,
isn't that a good thing? Isn't it a good
absolutely.
thing? Because one of my favorite quotes is that when people stop communicating, I forget the quote, when people stop talking, guns will cross the borders, meaning that if two people are arguing, they're at least still communicating. The second they stop talking to each other, you're now going to head into a much more violent area.
Sure. Because now those people are both in their echo chamber with their own thoughts and their only their side and their own energy, and there's no discourse anymore. So yeah, it's dangerous.
So,
So
because I just think it's fascinating because I know the cover you're talking about because I've
I
seen it.
created this thing because I felt like as an artist, it's my job to be a provocateur. And I was learning the process of publishing, and I was trying to figure out how to sell stuff on Amazon. And you can't create something, like you can't invent something and put it on Amazon without being either patented or copyrighted, right? Because if you're going to get sued, there has to be a paper trail, right? So I can't create a book and throw it on Amazon and create an ISBN number for it unless I get trademarked. So I had to get my logo for Cowabunga Comics trademarked by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. So I got a framed thing from the USPTO at the shop where my Cowabunga Comics logo is trademarked. And I did that because I wanted to make this book and put it on Amazon, but it sold out before I could figure Amazon out, because it took 7 months during COVID to get trademarked. So it's been a wild ride doing this thing. I don't know if I have a copy of it.
That's kind of crazy. I mean, again, I don't know anything about this.
So this was the first cover. You see the COVID. You see the baby going towards the COVID.
Yeah.
He's got a German tank he's lifting up with his MAGA hat on. There's a nationally syndicated political cartoonist that lives in my city in Jacksonville. And because of being immersed in the art scene, I got to know him. His name is Ed Hall. And I said, how much are you going to charge me to give me use of one of your cartoons? And he just came back right. This is what I charge. And I was like, oh shit, how can I pay you? And I paid him through PayPal, and I got his cartoon on the back. So, and this is me figuring out how to publish a book. So I really did this for me. I didn't expect anybody to want to buy them, which is funny because I was so cheap that I didn't want to pay to have them numbered. So I hand numbered every single one of them and wrote after Schuster on it.
So obviously, I mean, it's really interesting. So every time, and I don't know how you feel, but every time I've done something saying, I'm going to do this for me, I've always made money on things like that. And then every time I try to do something saying, oh, the crowd's going to love it, it doesn't work. And
I found that a long time ago, where when I go, oh, I'm going to do this because this is going to be hot. And then while I'm waiting for layers of paint to dry, I work on something for me. And then I go to show the world the thing, and they're like, what's that in the background? And I'm like, oh, that I did that for me. And they're like, oh, I want that. I'm like, what the fuck? You want the thing that I did for me? All right, sure.
It's also funny in my world is that every interview that I ever felt, oh man, that fucking interview was just bad. What the fuck was I doing? But bro, that was the best interview you've ever done. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? That thing was bad. You're like, no, dude, like
Yeah,
you
you
killed it.
can't anticipate what people are going to connect with, what's going to vibrate on the same frequency as one of your viewers. You can't. I let go of thinking I'm going to dictate that a long time ago. So.
And then every once in a while, I know what I'm doing. I'm like, oh my god, that thing was just hit perfectly, and everybody was just in on it. I mean, I just had one where it wasn't my best interview, but it was a trippy interview.
Okay.
It was Sasha Nakamoto, and she is the most high fiduciary and specked out VTuber out there. Is a good way to put it.
Okay.
Like her dev shit is it's off the chain. One of the most fascinating interview experiences I've ever had, and one of arguably the most fun interview I've ever had. It's a trippy one. It's a trippy one to watch.
Cool.
Super cool. But I digress. About me. I do want to though talk a little bit about the comic industry as a whole, because this is where we're going to get really controversial. So obviously, I have to ask you, because you're more the expert than me. How are you feeling about Frankie's comics? You could plead the fifth at any point.
Well, I mean, I know what's going on with them.
I could rephrase.
I think, how do I feel? I feel like they're in a bad spot, and they could probably use a publicist right now while they kick and scream and claw and fight their way back to break even. But when you're talking about millions of dollars of debt, literal millions, I don't think that anybody can chime in, because nobody knows what that's like. Nobody knows what it's like to try to provide for your family and have it looming over you that you owe millions and millions of dollars. So anybody that doesn't really know everything that's going on with Kevin and Frankie's comics, they should. I can't say that they should shut the fuck up, because a lot of them spent money and they're out that money. You know what I mean?
I'm out about it.
And you know what? When you're out money, and it's hard out here for a pimp right now, and you got money, you wish you had $150, but you got $150 that you paid them a year ago, and you ain't got that slab, and you just found out you're only going to get a raw book because they can't get it CGC graded anymore. You have every right to be pissed off. I can't believe he let it get as bad as it got.
This is my take on it. I'm curious how you feel. Is that I have counted out what I'm going to get from them, and I just chalked it up as a loss, and I just move forward. If I get something from them, great. If I don't, wonderful. I didn't do anything wrong. I don't feel bad. It's $100. I'm not worrying too much about it. Does it suck? Absolutely. Do I have to ever buy from them again? No. Do I have to be mean? Do I have to put them on blast? Absolutely not. If they wanted an interview on this show and they wanted to talk about it, I would more than happy to have them on. Maybe it would help. Maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. I'm not interested in destroying them. I'm upset about it.
Well, they destroyed themselves, brother. They're done. They'll never. He might. I don't know if he has any plans once this debt is caught up to stay in comics, but he should not stay in comics. Nobody's ever going to trust him again.
I'm showing grace, but I'm also looking at this from a different perspective, where maybe this is a lesson for everybody in comics to say, wait a second, having a lot of variance, keeping your business in check. Maybe this is a call for everybody to take a business course. If you're serious about comics and you're running anything over $50,000, to take one business course at community college, not for credit, just so you get an idea, or take an accounting course. Maybe this is the wake-up call, in my opinion, for everybody who is at that $50,000 to $100,000 level, to take an accounting course.
Sure, absolutely.
That's how I feel.
But there's other things besides just accounting that are involved here. To circle back to something we spoke about earlier, the minimum order quantity for Marvel is 3,000. you can't do 300 copies of a book. Who the fuck can sell 3,000 copies of a book? This many people can sell 3,000 copies of a book. This many people.
Isn't there only one?
You realize that out of all, they listed their creditors, right?
The top 20. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember what the figure was by Diamond?
I don't know by Diamond.
It was $200,000.
Was it by Diamond or was that Penguin Random House?
It was a comic book distributor. Doesn't matter which one. Let's say it was Lunar or Penguin. It was Penguin. $200,000. Yeah. Right. So he's actively in this variant game, trying to grow. Borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. Meanwhile, he can't order another book to keep his buyers happy without doing 3,000 copies. That definitely added to the bad choices that he made and the missteps that he made.
Don't they have deals with Comic Mint and KRS Comics for some of that? Because didn't they break up some of that 3,000, those companies?
Maybe.
Because that puts
but I will tell you this. Doesn't matter how many people you split it with. It only goes through one person's account.
That is true.
So clearly all that shit went through his account. Because who the hell else? It was $200,000. Like $200,000 is a whole year worth of books ordered from a vendor for like a busy shop. There's a busy shop, in Jacksonville, and he had a $200,000 diamond bill over the course of the year 2 years ago. All right, that's a year.
I haven't gone through anything like that. I don't know. I know what $1 million looks like in cash. I know exactly what it looks like in cash. And I know how stressful it can be. I know what. So I had a pretty major surgery. And my biggest concern was, and most people can't understand this, I'll be very honest about money, is if my surgery cost me $10,000, I wouldn't even blinked. In which that when people don't understand that if my surgery cost $10,000, it didn't cost way less than that. I want to make that crystal clear. But if I said to my parents when I got the bill, I said, if this is $10,000, I'm not even going to blink. Not even going to blink, because that's a bargain given U.S. healthcare. But how many people have that thought process and even think the way I think, let alone if you are in $1 million worth of debt? It's really, really interesting. In which so I understand the amount of pressure. I don't know how you manage it. I understand what that looks like and what that feels like.
Well, speaking of borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, they're selling books on Whatnot every single day, using their payouts from Whatnot to pay down what they can. And two of their debtors, one was the IRS and one was the Department of Revenue for the state that they live in, like North Carolina or whatever. So those are getting their money first. You know what I mean? Because that's how that works. But when you file Chapter 11, like when you file the kind of Chapter 11 that they filed, any payments that they had made to their vendors and creditors for the last 6 months had to be refunded. So let's say they paid $40,000 to CGC over the last 6 months before they got their Chapter 11. CGC had to refund them that money. Bro, could you imagine? Like, he's never going to be able to do business as a comic book guy again. So go to their Whatnot, buy as many books as you can, because you're going to get them for a steal, and they're going to use that money to try to make everybody else whole for their operating costs. But once everybody gets their books, fuck, bro.
I mean, right now it's 65% off on their website for Labor Day. I picked up books today from them, without a doubt.
That's crazy.
what you say? Am I wrong?
Their staff, it's a family-run business. When I saw them at MegaCon the year before last, they had mystery boxes for $30. Had like 10 books in it, bro. Fucking bangers. So we went over there and bought a bunch of the mystery boxes for $30 a pop, and then took those books over to Bjorn Behrens, and all the people were there that did those covers, and we made a fucking fortune off of them. to the point where I messaged them independently and was like, "Hey, can I buy some of your back stock? Like, I can, move some of this stuff." And they were like, "Oh, we don't do that." Little did I know they were in the middle of this crisis.
So what I'm hearing is I should really go buy more, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, those Venom books, those were hot, man. The Bjorn Barins, Venom, the Kale New, Venom playing hoops and all that shit. Those were great. We were able to get them signed at the show, take them home and flip them. It was tremendous.
They have a really good Black Cat, J. Scott Campbell up. It might be gone now, but I picked up 2 of them today, and it's a great book. $30 book for $10, 50 cents. No fucking brainer.
I mean, I bought a pallet of books from Comic Exposure. A pallet.
I like those books too.
Of exclusives. So
I don't know much about
5,200 books, all exclusives.
I mean, I'm not playing at your level. I'm playing at a much, much, much lower level. I'm a D1 team. You're the NBA.
No, I'm really not, though. I'm a small fish that's working with what he has, not overextending myself, and I'm building relationships. I got 5,200 exclusives for a song, bro. I've orchestrated an event where I've got artist Nate Melendez and artist Joe Doyle are both coming to my shop, and I put an event together called Squad Takes Over Whatnot. I've got 14 Whatnot streamers, big streamers, flying in from all over the United States for this weekend coming up. I rented them a mansion half a mile from my shop where everybody's going to stay, and we're just going to go crazy, bro. I've got product being printed, books, metal prints, foil prints, metal trading cards. It's going to be bananas.
Oh, man, I want some of these metal trading cards now because I'm a big metal.
Oh my God, bro. And everything's numbered, everything's limited. It's gonna be awesome, absolutely awesome.
I'm gonna stay away because I've gone through a massive expansion for what I'm doing with, again, copying what you do. I worked with what I had the last 6 months, and now I'm just gonna chill out for a few months before I go through re-expansion, just to stabilize it. Because again, I'm not interested. I want a business that's going to last the next 40 years. I don't want a business that's going to be here today and gone tomorrow. And I think that's one of the biggest problems.
I'm not in the comic book business. I'm in the empire business.
I'm not technically in the comic book business either. I am in the business of selling items and selling collectibles. And so I will, if all of a sudden comics didn't work and cars did, I would move right over to cars in a heartbeat. Sure. I just understand comics.
When you diversify your revenue streams, you're doing something. I'm getting ready to buy my best friend's pressure washing equipment, and I'm going to put somebody on locally here in my town as the local pressure washer, and that's just another little small business.
I have a lot of employees. They're called stocks, and they pay dividends every single month, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and they're the best employees in the world, guys. They never complain. They never ask for a day off. They say, "Daddy, here's some more money for you." And I'm like, "That's great. It's wonderful." But I was just curious your thoughts on it, because obviously it's a sad story. But I think it is a big, important lesson for anybody in this space to know what happened. And I think there's a fortune to be made.
It's a cautionary tale, to be certain. And honestly, I think that if I had more details than I do about the Frankie situation, I would make it into a comic.
You'd make it a what?
I'd make it into a comic.
So the story is that
it would be called "What Not to Do," but it would be like "What Not to Do."
That's hilarious. I would absolutely buy, and we would have to work out an exclusive for my eBay store for that one. We would absolutely have to, because it'd be great. It'd be great.
And it would just be like a pug or whatever that dog is would be the store owner instead of Kevin.
or we would do a cosplay variant and maybe do something with Men in Black with the pug.
Well, I mean, for the story of the book, the shop owner.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be the dog. Yeah.
I don't really care about what's in the book. I care about the cover.
Yeah, sure.
I'm a cover collector, but I digress. But I don't want to keep talking about Frankie. I think we beaten them up enough today. I'm sure somebody enjoyed it. And I'm sure this is a healing process for everybody who's been screwed. And I'm sure Ivan Tao appreciates this. Because he also is owed money.
He's gonna get his $8,000, and he probably got a lot of extra work from people. That the community, I will say, they're really good about when somebody gets hosed. They're really good about rallying. You know what I mean? I had a situation where Scorpion Comics, I had a very nasty blow up with them, and I got a lot of work, and I got to work with Trinity Comics, Comics Elite, Comic Exposure. I got to do graphic design for a lot of people because they knew that Scorpion Comics was in the wrong, and so I'm sure Ivan Tao is going to be fine.
Well, if Ivan Tao needs somebody, I know a guy who knows a guy who could fix the problem in more than one way. I have friends who work in the construction business. They fit excellent shoes, guys, near rivers.
Concrete boots.
Hey! I was keeping it ambiguous.
Were you though?
What? They could be running a shoe store. It's near a river. It could be a scenic view. I mean, I need a plausible defense here.
Sure.
Just because my father's a lawyer doesn't mean I'm not well trained in the law, guys. But I digress. Enough about Frankie's. I think we're going to segue right into this because what do you think the health of the comic industry is?
The health?
It's a bad segue. I'm sorry.
I think there's, I've said it before. I think there's a lot of collectors who are cosplaying as sellers right now. And I think some people need to stay in their fucking lane, so that shit like that doesn't happen. Capitalism is a crazy thing, bro.
Did you think that, because I was speaking to somebody who is definitely more into the stock market and more into the economy yesterday, because me and my best friends, their father and me were speaking at a barbecue yesterday, and he thinks a recession is coming. I think one is coming. And I think that when money tightens up, I think comics in many ways are optional. Not to get pessimistic. And I think what starts happening is that people choose books. And I think that we've been on a massive upward spending since COVID. And we've gone through a lot of growth in the indie scene and crowdfunding. And I think that we've seen blips and we've seen climbing up the roller coaster, going down the roller coaster. And I think when things hit, I think that good product will rise and it will always sell. But I think a lot of the bad product is going to get out.
Well, we've seen key books decline in value for the first time ever. But the increase in that value was half of it was market manipulation. Some people figured out how to manipulate the market and they started doing it en masse. And during COVID, a lot of people that had money, that working from home or whatever, the pandemic didn't hurt them, continued to spend money that they would have spent on going out to dinner, going to, living the life of opulence, going to shows and sitting in box seats and, spending their money going, skiing and all that stuff. They spent that money on comics. They had more liquid cash to spend and they spent it on books and they were able to bid these books up higher, so a lot of these, people who collecting was a passion, but they didn't usually have the resources to spend that much money. The price of the books went through the roof. And then a lot of the people buying books for the first time in this quantity were in the UK. So a lot of UK buyers were doing the same thing with their liquid cash that they're not spending going out to eat and going to parties. They were spending on books. So it made the price of key books spike in a way that the market has just never seen. So for those prices to come down, it's not signs of a recession, it's signs of a market normalization.
Oh, I mean, I
When
don't.
I see people right now
Yeah.
spending over $600 on whatnot for an Ariel Diaz sketch, it's hard for me to see that and think that we're going into a recession.
I have a different parameter where I'm not basing it off of comics per se. What I'm basing it off of is the market with all of the money that's been printed in the last, 2.5 years, and that we've been on a bull run for 15 years and since 2008, and we're long overdue. And we had an artificial dip for 53 days, and then we were right back up. So that's why I'm saying I'm not viewing it off the comic market. I agree that it's been manipulated. I do think people had extra money, and when people have extra money and you're not going out to the bars, you got to find somewhere else to go, right? And there's only so much Netflix. If Netflix is only $10 and the Netflix bill didn't change, but you now have you don't have an extra $500. You have a reallocated $500, and this is how baseball cards got really hot, and this is why that whole thing got revitalized. And a lot of people spend money because I'm into that hobby too. And that's the other part of my business is selling baseball cards and flipping stuff like that. So I just think that we're going to be in for it because I think it's coming, and I think that it's long overdue. I technically think we should have had this thing in 2018. So I actually think we're about 6 years overdue.
For a recession.
I think we're 6 years overdue. I think it's
well, if one's right around the corner, then it's absolutely in majority due to the spike in prices for everyday items for no reason. They used COVID as an excuse to raise the prices of everything. Food is so expensive right now. Every time my wife goes shopping, she can't fucking believe how much it costs. Thankfully, we can afford it. But how many people put something back because they can't afford that loaf of bread and the mayo or whatever the fuck, But corporate greed is fucking through the roof. It's crazy. CEOs in 1982 made an average of 30 times the average worker at a business. Now it's 400 times the average worker salary. That's fucking greed, bro. That's it. That's it. That's the only answer. So yeah, when toilet paper and like every fucking thing in the planet is just more expensive now for no reason, we got less people now. So these resources, they have to charge more because there's less people to make the same profit. Like the money they were making, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And analyzing the stock market and the state of the economy isn't something that's really on my radar. So I'm forced to guess. But I think that corporate greed is a really great guess.
I think that's part of it, but I also think that just supply chains are fucked up. And in this country and in the world, what we do with supply chains is that we don't fix them. We say, cool, no worries. We put a Band-Aid on it and then we move forward. And then that's what we do. And it's been like that indefinitely. It's a problem. But again, this is a whole different discussion with a whole different cast of people. And I have a little bit of an understanding.
Supply chains had normalized. There was a whole thing I heard on NPR like a year ago where in the middle of the pandemic, they lost all these drivers. People were like, fuck this. I'm talking about semi-drivers. So they were relocating Polacks over here and putting them to work as truck drivers. They were putting them through a course, teaching them, and then they were, like a whole bunch of Polish came over here to be truck drivers. You know what I mean? So the market found a way, So
maybe. I mean, I don't know much about that, so I can't comment. And which I didn't hear that story. I mean, I believe it. But it is what it is. But obviously, I mean, I just have a sense that we're in for it and we're all long overdue. And that's just my take on it. I don't think it's going to be Great Depression. I think that's hyperbole. I think it's going to be rough for 18 months.
Sure.
And I think people are just going to have to bunker up.
Wish me luck in my fledgling pressure washing business then.
So you're going to be just fine. You are not the one that I'm concerned about.
I just bought a website for it last night. I'm hesitant to tell you the URL. because it's so bad shit, like over the top. It's almost like Pouches made this website. It's called aquaforcepowerblast.com.
You know what though? See. This is your marketing campaign. I'm going to give you the best marketing campaign ever. You need to.
It's going to be Pouches with a pressure washer. Is the logo, bro? I shit you not.
I'm going to one up you. What you need to do is you need to wrap a car with that. So,
don't die.
It's going to be so good. So what you need to do is that you need to find an Uber driver, right? And you need the Uber driver who drives Uber.
Pay him to let me wrap his car.
So the deal is that you're going to give him a bunch of free comics. You're going to pay for the wrap, and maybe you'll give him like $50 a month. Best advertising ever you'll ever have. Guarantee you.
Yep.
It will pay off in spades.
Oh man.
See, it's a good idea, right?
Oh yeah.
And then what you should do then is that, you know how they have all those like Ikari cars at anime cons?
Oh yeah.
This should join that crew. I'm telling you, it's a shoo-in. It's such a good idea. They cannot refuse. I'm sorry. We'll make them an offer they can't refuse. Because I know a guy who knows a guy. But Ivan Tao comes first. I'm sorry.
Yeah, AGs. That's a lot of money. I don't know how many covers that is, but.
Whew. I mean. My guy. I know a guy who knows a guy. He'll do it as a favor for Ivan Tao. I'm sure it'll work out. Just because somebody will walk a little bit weird for 6 months after what happens, that's not my problem.
Can't get blood from a stone, man.
That is true. But we're not dealing with stones, so we're all right.
I'm trying not to engage. I can be horrible, and I don't want to be horrible.
That's all right. See, I can do it because I have no parameters anymore, and I'm perfectly fine with that.
So if it's possible for you to drop the bookmark Kickstarter link into the chat so anybody seeing this can see it.
It's actually already in the description.
Oh, dope. I did see that on YouTube. Thank you for that. That was dope.
I prepare everybody. I'm a professional. Half the time.
I'm the new guy. I don't, I usually let my squad, I don't have to sell myself or anything. They take care of that for me. So this is all new to me. So thanks for having me on here to stumble my way through an interview. I appreciate you having me on, man. This has been a lot of fun.
I'll say, what did I say to you? I say I make people look good and that I don't leave people behind. And this is what people, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves, and then I'll give you a chance to promote, is people are terrified of public speaking. And I guarantee you, if you know your book, everybody, and you're relaxed, interviews are not scary, especially with people who are not interested in tripping you up. It's not a gotcha show. It's not, and that's the point. So I'm happy to have you on anytime. I mean, you did contribute to my Kickstarter, my failed attempt of a Kickstarter that did fund and cross the line, but I don't want to talk about that. I was not ready for it, and it was a bad idea. It was a bad idea. And
well, thank Travis for that, for my contribution, because I when he tells me somebody's worth backing, I help where I can.
It was a bad idea, and I have a better understanding of where I'm at and what I'm doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I tried something that was a good experience, but it was not a good idea. And I have a very different understanding of where I'm going. And honestly, I'm not going to come back to Kickstarter for that idea, but I will come back to Kickstarter for a comic.
Well, hopefully when you are able to see the full page and the full campaign, I hope you like what you see enough to grab yourself a copy of the book, brother.
If it's 30 days, I will, because I just need to get past my next paycheck. If it's 2 weeks, it's going to be tough.
It's a 30-day campaign. So we're going live at 6 p.m. tomorrow. You can find a link. If you don't see the link in the description here, you can find me on social media at Art of Kyle Willis on every platform except Snapchat. And I have a link tree in my bio profile for every platform that I'm on. And the first link in my link tree is to the Kickstarter. So
Yeah, and then I'm just going to keep saying it because I was going to give you a chance to self-promote, but you already did that. So what I'm going to just say to everybody, and it's really important, is that you have to support indie, and then you have to support comics. And what that means is that if somebody has a book that's coming out, whether that's on Kickstarter, Zoop, Crowdfunder, Indiegogo, I don't really care where their book is being crowdfunded, but you should go support it. And that means backing, whether you're pledging $1, picking up a digital, picking up a physical, or picking up art pages, whatever you're picking up, every little bit helps. And that is the first way how you could help. If you are not a crowdfunding person, or the book is not your cup of tea, you should follow people on social media, X/Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that helps. TikTok helps,
If you
whatnot.
can't afford to buy a copy of the book, share the campaign. Maybe somebody in your friends list will see it and they'll buy a copy, and you're still able to help and contribute in that way. You know, you don't have to buy from me to help me be successful.
And
So,
also, is commenting. Commenting is really helpful because guess what? It tricks engagement and it pushes
yep, it
engagement.
tickles the algorithm,
And
the algorithm's real, y'all.
and then the other thing too is that, let's say, and hopefully you're not gonna get upset when I say this, let's say you hate this book, but you like Kyle's artwork. You could pick up some commission from him. You could pick up another one of his books, and while it won't help directly with this book, it will indirectly help. And
Absolutely.
that's the other thing too is that some people say, I just hate this type of book. So I'm the first person to say that I am not a romantic comedy type of comic reader. But if you have a book that's like a military book and you have a romantic comedy book, I'll pick up your military book. I'm not going to pick up your romantic comedy book, but I am supporting you. So that's something to keep in mind as well, that not every little thing you're going to love, but you can support people directly and indirectly. So that's everything that I want to say about you. And then as far as I'm concerned about me, obviously, I appreciate when people follow me on X/Twitter, Pop Anime Comics. Instagram is Pop Anime Comics. Facebook is Pop Anime Comics. YouTube is Pop Anime Comics. That's a big one, guys. Subscribing on YouTube is free, and it means the world to me. It really means the world to me. And you can subscribe, and it's a huge deal for me, and I greatly appreciate it.
I'm gonna make sure that I'm subscribed real quick because I gave the link to a buddy. He was like, "Is it gonna be on YouTube?" And I was like, "I think so. Give me a second," and I found it.
So I absolutely appreciate when people subscribe on YouTube. It means a lot to me. It's super important. It's free, and I have 1,100 plus videos of content up on YouTube, and every day I'm adding more. So there's something for everyone.
You got a new sub from me, baby boy.
Yeah, 540. There we go. But it is so important. And then I have a bunch of other stuff, like I have an eBay store if you're looking for rare books. I also buy me a coffee. And if you're looking for something for me or you want to advertise on my show, everybody, you are more than welcome to do such. Otherwise, I am just happy that you watch and you are entertained by everything that I do. So that's all I have to promote. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Well, I do have a Discord because that's my preferred method of communication. It was really hard being the only person in charge of all my social media accounts to field messages on Instagram about an order on whatnot. And da, 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 da. So I just asked everybody, just join this Discord. So I'm in my link tree is a link to my Discord. And the benefit of being in the Discord, which doesn't cost anything, it might be a new app to you that you have to learn how to navigate, but you will see everything first. I always post it to the Discord first before it goes on Instagram, before I announce anything. It's always going to be on the Discord first. So if you want to see something first and it's going to be a limited book and there's only going to be 50 copies, 25 copies, and you want to make sure that you get one, you're going to know about it first in the Discord. If you're only following me on Instagram, you're going to have access. Your access is going to be priority in my Discord. So I'm really excited to bring this book to the world, and that's really all there is I feel like a 12-year-old kid said I used to go to McDonald's with my best friend, and we would, mimic the art styles of our favorite artists. His was Eric Larson, and mine was Todd McFarlane, and we sit at Burger King in Naranja, Florida, drawing these, on lined paper, getting our 35-cent, burgers and doodling. And that 12-year-old version of me is so excited right now for this launch tomorrow. And I don't have like high hopes. I have high confidence. It's I believe in what I'm selling. I don't feel like I'm hawking spirit juice to the malnourished. It's a fun book, and it's priced. It's got a human being price, so my prices are good. You're not going to come here and be like, oh my god, what is this, Clayton Crane prices? It's got good prices on my stuff, and it's a fun read. So that's it. Thanks for having me.
Well, I don't think I could have said that any better myself, everybody. And that is a wrap.